Sarah.
8 out of 10 for today, thank you.
8? You're harsh.
Look, a son's.
Harsh. We'll be back with the headlines at 8 o'clock. Now it's time for this week's edition of Newswatch.
The BBC's coverage of pensions under the spotlight. Welcome to Newswatch with me, Samira Ahmed. Coming up, did BBC News represent fairly the government's promised rise in next year's pension rate? And what is going on here? First, royal stories often provoke a reaction among Newswatch viewers, and Monday's release of an emotional video by the Princess of Wales in which she revealed she'd finished her course of chemotherapy was no exception.
Like we've never seen them before. Informal, intimate, glossy and polished. This video, released by Kensington Palace, is the Princess of Wales, in her own words.
The cancer journey is complex, scary and unpredictable for everyone, especially those closest to you.
Anthony Jones had this reaction. It is good news that the Princess of Wales is coming off chemotherapy. However, it should not be top of the news. The BBC needs to know not everyone supports the royal family to such a degree that anything or everything royal is soaked up by a fawning audience. But Daryl Miller had a different perspective, having spotted headlines such as this. I strongly object to BBC News referring to the Princess of Wales just as Kate in a headline. It feels like a PR attempt to make a royal feel like one of us, no matter what the story is. The BBC should be objective and impartial. There was more emotion on display in a moving report from Yogita Limai in Afghanistan, shown on Sunday's late news bulletin on BBC One.
This is what an average morning looks like at Jalalabad's main hospital. Hundreds throng every corner, every passage, as extreme poverty pushes more children into disease each day. Zara, 13 months old, one of 3 million malnourished children in the country.
Randy Dager sent us this compliment. Yogita Limai's story on the starving children in Afghanistan is eye-opening and so necessary. The spotlight must never dim on these conditions. Thank you for your timely reporting. After the report had been shown, presenter Clive Myrie posed a question to the correspondent in Kabul.
Given those heartbreaking images, Yogita, one wonders what the international community is actually trying to do to improve the situation, because the Taliban ain't doing anything.
Chris Walmsley picked up on some of the wording used there, wondering, should Clive Myrie be using the word ain't as he did during the 10 o'clock news? Financial decisions affecting the country's pensioners have been much discussed this week, with Parliament voting on Tuesday to restrict winter fuel payments to only the poorest pensioners rather than all of them, as has been the case since 1997. Amid some anger at that decision, the same day it emerged that the new full state pension paid to those who reached pensionable age after April 2016 was expected to rise by £460 a year from next April. That was covered by BBC television like this, and in an online article headlined like this. But that wasn't the whole story, as a number of viewers pointed out. One of them was James Bradley, and he joins me now. James, thanks for coming on Newswatch. We've just seen the headlines saying that state pension set to rise by £460 next year. Why did you contact us about this?
It's frustrating listening to this from both the BBC and the politicians, where they keep saying that pensions will rise by £460 next April. But that is for the new state pension. It doesn't cover the people born before 1951 and 1953. But the rise for the basic state pension is only going to be £350.
So just to be clear, as you've been saying, 3/4 of current pensioners won't get that full headline amount, that the BBC headline. They get rather £100 less, and then there's all these other issues. What's your concern about the fact that the BBC gave that headline with the higher figure?
Well, pensioners are thinking, we're going to get £460. We're going to be better off. That is not the actual case. You know, it's every time they come out with headlines like, oh, you're going to be okay. Listen, you're not going to be affected by the £300 fuel benefit that's being taken from you. This is not correct. And I think it's about time that BBC and the politicians should actually tell the truth.
James, why does this concern you? Do you think it gives a perception that all pensioners are rich?
Oh, yes. This is the whole idea. Yes, there are pensioners who literally have got plenty of money. There's no, I can't deny that. But there's a lot of people, if you go back pre-1951, a lot of them pensioners aren't going to have any increase apart from the 350.
Right. So
and that's not going to come through to April.
Yeah. Do you think the BBC's been insufficiently challenging, then, of the government's claims for these numbers?
Yes, they are. They should actually be looking into it in depth. If the government's going to say something, the BBC are the only ones we've got that can actually do anything at the moment and say to the government, hold them to this and say, excuse me, what you're saying is correct.
The BBC has pointed out to us that in some of their news alerts, that you get to your phone, and in some of their news articles, they have flagged up that headline figure, the 460, was about newer pensions, and that it's hard to get all the nuance across in a short headline. Does that satisfy you?
No, I haven't seen that. If you want the honest answer, I have not seen anybody say this is a new state pension. I'm interested, what is the basic state pension? Yes, the new state pension. I don't qualify. I was born in 1950, so yes, I miss out. And a lot of people don't realise that. A lot of pensioners, these are old people and everything else. They see these headlines, oh, I'm going to get 460. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Nobody's actually spelling out the differences in both this new state and the basic.
What if the headline had said up to £460 a year? Would that have solved everything?
That would have been better, yes. It would stop people saying, oh, this is great, you're going to get 460, up to 460. Yeah, it implies, therefore, not everybody's going to get it.
James Bradley, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, as mentioned, we asked BBC News for a response to the points James was making there. Here is the statement they gave us. Pensions in general, including the old and new state pension and the additional state pension, are complex by their nature, and those nuances can never be fully explained in a headline. In order to help audiences understand this information, we created a specific explainer article and made sure our reports were clear on the differences between the new and old schemes. BBC News has a style guide advising journalists on points of terminology, spelling, punctuation and grammar, as well as issues of accuracy, fairness and impartiality. It's publicly available and deals with some pretty controversial issues, such as how to describe aspects of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the wording to be used around sex and gender. While not quite on that scale, some of you may have views on a change announced this week. Here it is. BBC News style is changing. From today, we will not use simple honorifics, Mr, Ms, Miss, Mrs, when referring to politicians in BBC News digital output. The relevant style guide entry has been adjusted. This guidance applies to how we refer to current and former politicians, elected and unelected, at all levels in the UK and internationally. What that means is, in future, you might be reading on the BBC website about Sunak and Trump rather than Mr Sunak and Mr Trump. Let us know if you think that's a welcome development or not. We've mentioned in the past some problems associated with the red banner at the bottom of the screen on the news channel. Viewer David Mark Davis contacted us this week, having seen this on the channel on Wednesday night. You'll see that most of the word news at the bottom of the screen is obscured by the news bar. And then there's that QR code box on the bottom right, via which viewers can access live feeds on other stories. In theory. David writes, I have just spotted a problem. Your rolling news bar at the bottom of the screen cuts off the on-screen QR code, making it unusable. I hope that this helps. Thank you, David. We'll see if the powers that be can finally address that. Finally, transmission on the news channel has become more complicated recently, with different streams running at certain times, which means the output delivered to international audiences goes to commercial breaks, while domestic viewers are treated to, well, let's see what happened just before 1 p.m. on Monday.
More news with me and the team on News Now at the top of the hour. You're watching BBC News.
Over the next 4 minutes, the news channel broadcast quite a lot of this. More than a minute of presenter Anita McVeigh checking her phone, her microphone though switched off. A rehearsal of the forthcoming headlines.
A special report from inside Afghanistan where
A premature transmission of those headlines. 15 seconds of this.
So sorry, we are out of time. Thank you.
And then the end of an interview, which is probably what we should have been watching all along. Lucky Kay was not alone in wondering, what happened to BBC News today? It suddenly went off air. BBC News told us there was a human error on the production and operational side, which meant for a very short period of time, the wrong feed was shown to audiences. Thank you for all your comments this week. If you want to share your opinions about what you see or hear on BBC News, on TV, radio, online and social media, email newswatch@bbc.co.uk. Or you can find us on X @NewsWatchBBC. You can call us on 0370 010 6676 and do have a look at previous interviews on our website, bbc.co.uk/newswatch. That's all from us for now. Thank you for joining us. Do think about getting in touch and perhaps even coming on the programme. We'll be back to hear more of your thoughts about how the BBC covers the news next week. Goodbye.
5 British boys.
Let's go! I've been dreaming about doing this. I want to learn, I want to soak up everything I can.
100 days in South Korea.
Every week you're going to prepare a performance.
Learning from K-pop's finest.
You guys will be evaluated by Heejun.
This opportunity is huge.
The standards are going to be very high.
But will they become the next big thing?
이거 언제까지 틀릴 거야?
I love you, Korea!
Made in Korea, the K-pop experience. Press red to watch now on BBC iPlayer.
Every moment counts.
This is it, the last push. It's go time.
Let's make it all count. I'm manifesting my name in that book.
We're going to fight for this until the very end.
The race is anyone's. Celebrity Race Across the World concludes Wednesday at 9 on BBC One and iPlayer.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Naga Manchetti and Ben Thompson.
Our headlines today. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said the next few weeks and months could be crucial for the war in Ukraine after holding talks with President Biden at the White House.
The over 80s will lose out the most under plans to cut winter fuel payments. That's according to new analysis from the Department for Work and Pensions.
2 astronauts stranded in space until next year say they've learned to expect the unexpected as they wait to return to Earth.
To 8 days to 8 months or 9 months or 10 months, whatever it is, we're going to do the very best job we can do every single day, because that's what the folks that do this type of job have to do.
Good morning. In sport, Team Europe have a mountain to climb in Virginia. That's after the US built a record 4-point lead going into the second day of the Solheim Cup.
And after a chilly start in the south, the weather will be warming up over the next couple of days, but we've still got some rain and some wind in the north this weekend. I'll have all the details here on BBC Breakfast.
Hello, good morning. It's just after 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 14th of September. Sir Keir Starmer says talks with President Biden in Washington have been wide-ranging and productive, but wouldn't say whether he'd persuaded the US to allow Ukraine to fire long-range missiles into Russia.
President Zelensky has repeatedly called for permission to use the weapons on targets across the border. He claims it's the only way to end the war. Our political editor, Chris Mason, sent this report from the White House.
I think the next few weeks and months could be crucial.
What does President Biden make of Russia's threats against the West?
I don't think much about Vladimir Putin.
This is the Blue Room of the White House. The President, the Prime Minister and their team spoke here for about an hour and a half. The war in Ukraine dominated the conversation. Afterwards, Sir Keir Starmer wouldn't be drawn on whether he'd persuaded the President that authorising Ukraine to fire Western missiles at Russia was a good idea. Instead, he said,
well, there's only one reason we're having these discussions, and that is because Putin has illegally invaded Ukraine. The quickest way to resolve this, obviously, lies through what Putin actually does, because it's for him to end this. But we are having the discussion. We've stood with Ukraine. Ukraine has a right to self-defence. And we've stood united, not just with our allies here in the US, but across with our NATO allies. That's very, very important to us.
These are the long-range Anglo-French missiles Ukraine would love to fire into Russia. The UK making the argument to allies it's a request that should be granted. They rely on American satellite systems to work. You might ask why the Prime Minister has been so keen to dash here to visit a president who we know will be gone in just a few months' time. His answer is there are urgent issues that need addressing now, not least this question of missiles. The President has been sceptical about Ukraine being able to fire them into Russia, fearing it would be dangerous. This is the reality of the war grinding on in Ukraine, a country desperate for ongoing help, its allies weighing up how best to do it, and at what cost. Chris Mason, BBC News in Washington.
Well, our Ukraine correspondent is James Waterhouse. He sent us this update from the capital, Kyiv.
We've yet to hear anything official from President Zelensky or his office, but there is a familiar pattern here as far as Kyiv is concerned. Ukraine asks for a particular level of military support. The West says no over fears of escalation. Ukraine's position worsens, and then the West, in most occasions, then concedes and gives the green light. As far as Ukraine is concerned, this is merely a continuation of that. There is clearly a frustration, as Ukraine sees it, in terms of having to repel Russian attacks from the air from across the border. They are allowed to use Western missiles to defend its own skies. They can launch them close to the border inside Russia. But what they want to do dearly is target Russian air bases deep inside Russia, where countless fighter jets take off unchallenged and drop glide bombs and missiles on Ukrainian towns and cities. This is what Ukraine desperately wants. If it was to get such permission, I don't think it would make a drastic difference in terms of the tide of this war, but it would help Ukraine defend its skies. That really is the belief here. Now, we had all the reports, we had all of the expectations yesterday that we would see such an announcement. That has not materialized. We don't really know what was discussed in the White House. There are more discussions expected at the United Nations next week. But for Ukraine, the wait for that permission goes on, and there is no let-up in the fighting where its troops continue to struggle.
That's our correspondent there, James Waterhouse in Kyiv. Now let's turn our attention to all the other main headlines today, including the latest on those winter fuel payments. Nanga has the details.
More information coming through at the moment, Ben. More than 750,000 people who are entitled to pension credits but don't apply are going to miss out on winter fuel payments this year, according to the Department for Work and Pensions. The analysis into the impact of changes to the allowance suggests that the over-80s will be hit hardest. We can talk to our political correspondent, Rajdeep Sandhu. Rajdeep, good morning to you. Now, look, we know this is a big political hot potato, so to speak, isn't it? Because the Labour Party is defending its decisions when it comes to this, and other parties are trying to put pressure on it to change its course.
Yeah. They are, and we saw the big vote in the House of Commons this week. It came up again in Prime Minister's questions. Conservatives calling for a full impact assessment of this policy. What we've got today, published late last night by the Department for Work and Pensions, was a limited equalities analysis, so showing the impact on different groups of pensioners, showing that the over 80s, because they get a higher payment of £300, will be hit more financially than those who receive £200, and that most people, the Department for Work and Pensions is only expecting an extra 100,000 people to claim pension credit, and like you said, more than 750,000 to not to claim it, and therefore miss out on the winter fuel allowance. The Conservatives are calling for the publication of a full impact assessment. The Liberal Democrats have said it was absolutely unthinkable that the Labour government made this change without having a full impact assessment that would look at kind of the impact on pensioners in terms of their health and other things like that, a wider impact assessment. Now, the Treasury has said that its focus now is trying to get more pensioners to claim pension credit so that anyone who's entitled to it gets that extra benefit. But of course, this pressure will continue. And I think Downing Street would have hoped that it would have stopped after the vote, after the decision was made. But given that we are approaching winter and that we are going to see pensioners who are going to miss out on this pension credit, I think the pressure is only going to continue.
Rajdeep, thanks very much. Rajdeep Sandhu there, our political correspondent. Pope Francis has criticised both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris when asked about the US presidential election. The pontiff made the comments when referring to the candidates' stances on abortion and migration, saying that voters should choose the person they believe to be the lesser of two evils when it comes to November's election. A state funeral is being held today for the Ugandan Olympic marathon runner Rebecca Cheptegei, who was set on fire by her former boyfriend. The 33-year-old died in hospital 4 days after the attack. Doctors said she'd suffered burns on more than 80% of her body, which led to multi-organ failure. An 18-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after 3 people died at a flat in Luton. All 3 victims were pronounced dead at the scene. Our reporter Vincent McAviney has more.
Police were called to this 15-storey tower block in Luton at 5:30 on Friday morning, after concerns for the welfare of someone in one of the flats. When they arrived, police found 3 people with serious injuries, who were then pronounced dead at the scene. An 18-year-old man was arrested near the flats, and a weapon was recovered.
As a result of the inquiries that we completed, at a very early stage, we've been able to identify and arrest an individual. That 18-year-old man is currently in custody at Luton Police Station.
Some neighbours were too afraid to leave their flats yesterday, not knowing what was going on and whether they were safe.
I woke up to my boys screaming in the morning and looking out the window, there's the police everywhere with guns, my boys are screaming. Nothing, like, couldn't imagine waking up to it.
Yeah, it's scary. It's not nice knowing that something's happened this serious and we don't know what's happened.
About 5:30 in the morning I heard the shouting and the police sirens, yeah. But from what I have heard, it is very gut-wrenching to hear something like that on your doorstep, definitely. Not nice at all. Very sad.
This is a nightmare because I'm a single mom. I have my coffee every morning in the balcony and I saw all the police cars and everything, and the nursery called me telling me that the nursery is going to be closed today, so I couldn't drop him off either.
Bedfordshire Police want to reassure residents that this was an isolated incident and there's no threat to the wider community. The victims have not yet been named. Vincent McAviney, BBC News.
The Liberal Democrats are in Brighton today for their party conference. They have a record 72 MPs after the general election and say they'll use their parliamentary presence to call for urgent measures to tackle the NHS crisis and improve social care. Our political correspondent Hannah Miller has more.
The Lib Dems are arriving in Brighton in a mood that matches the weather. After celebrating their best ever general election results, the party's the 3rd biggest in Parliament, and some of its members are here as MPs for the first time.
The mood is so upbeat, it is so buoyant, but we're really determined to get stuff done. So the reason why we fight elections, why we win elections, is so that we can achieve things for our community. So I'm excited to be talking about our plan for fixing social care and the health service and how we really represent our communities, be that strong, determined opposition to the government, and represent our communities the best possible way we can.
The Liberal Democrats achieved record election results by pitching themselves in opposition to the Conservatives, raising the question of what to do now that Labour are in government. The party says it wants to offer a constructive opposition, challenging ministers on policies they don't like, such as the recent cut in the winter fuel allowance. And they want to use this platform to put forward their own ideas too, with a focus today on health and social care.
Fixing social care is going to be critical to helping the NHS. We have to help the NHS, but we also have to get social care back on its feet so we can get people out of hospital, back to work, get the economy growing again. And that was a bit of the elephant in the room on Thursday when Wes Streeting was making a statement, because it can't be done without fixing social care.
And among the policies, could there be another stunt like those Ed Davies become famous for? This is, after all, a party that's proved it knows how to have a good time. Hannah Miller, BBC News, Brighton.
Pop star and actor Justin Timberlake has warned people against drink driving in a public safety announcement he was ordered to make after pleading guilty to the offence. Timberlake was also given a community service sentence and told to pay a fine. He was pulled over in New York in June when police officers saw him drive through a stop sign.
Even if you've had one drink, don't get behind the wheel of a car. There's so many alternatives. Call a friend, take an Uber. There's many travel apps. Still, take a taxi.
Now, two NASA astronauts who've been stranded in space for months insist that they don't feel let down by Boeing, despite problems with the company's spacecraft.
In a press conference yesterday, they said they were trained to expect the unexpected. Our science correspondent, Palab Ghosh, has been following their journey.
Ignition and liftoff of Starliner and Atlas V.
Butch and Sonny blasted off for the International Space Station at the beginning of June. It was an 8-day mission. But 3 months on, they're still in space.
We have you loud and clear. How us?
This is their first press conference to answer questions about how they feel about being stuck in space.
You asked what we miss, right? Of course, you know, the things that we always miss, our families. I miss my 2 dogs. I miss my friends. But you know what? Like Butch said, there are so many people on Earth that are sending us messages, and it makes you feel just right at home.
Butch and Sonny left Earth with leaks in the propulsion system. Some of the thrusters cut out during docking. They arrived safely, greeted with the usual hugs, but engineers wanted to get to the bottom of the thruster problems before bringing them home. They never did. So do they feel let down by Boeing, who made the Starliner spacecraft?
Let down? Absolutely not. We are pushing the edges of the envelope in everything that we do, and it is not easy.
Starliner is now backing away from station.
Starliner returned to Earth last week without Butch and Sonny. Boeing said it would be completely safe for them, but NASA overruled them, and the astronauts said for the first time that they agreed.
We found some things that we just could not get comfortable with, putting us back in the Starliner when we had other options. We could have gotten to the point, I believe, where we could have returned on Starliner, but we just simply ran out of time.
Butch and Sonny seem to be enjoying life on the space station.
This is my happy place. I love being up here in space. It's just fun. You know, every day you do something that's work, quote unquote. You can do it upside down.
Sonny and Butch are working with the rest of the space station crew with experiments, maintenance and having fun. Palab Ghosh, BBC News.
So the time is 8:15. Ben and I, so what happens is we get set up, our screens get set up. So we see Sarah now, who's about to give us the weather. Morning, Sarah. We have been looking at your picture and trying to guess where it is. So I'm going north because I thought I saw kind of like a structure, you know, in the background, so maybe like, you know, an older structure. But then you spotted the houses and the building to the right, Ben, and were thinking...
Well, originally I was sort of North Wales, and then I went more Devon, Cornwall. So I'm basically...
So we're all over the country. Who's closest?
Yeah, sorry, Ben, you are miles out. This is Scarborough.
Scarborough!
So, yeah, North Yorkshire, coast of North Yorkshire.
Oh, wow,
beautiful.
it looks beautiful.
Now
as
it
well.
all makes sense, doesn't it? Beautiful, yeah. Gorgeous start to the day there. Some sunshine around. Good morning to you. Many of us are waking up to spells of sunshine, but not quite everywhere. A bit further north than this, we've got some cloud and some outbreaks of rain around too. But gradually through the course of the weekend, after that chilly start, things are going to be warming up. So yes, temperatures are going to be on the up over the next couple of days. Not dry everywhere. We've got some rain, particularly across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland today, but tomorrow you should see some brighter and drier weather there. So low pressure sitting to the northwest of the UK at the moment. We've got this high pressure though holding on towards the south. So lots of sunshine, but temperatures in low to mid single figures for central and southern England. So certainly a fresh start. We've got a touch of grass frost around in places. Bit of drizzly rain for northern England and Scotland, but that should ease away. Later in the afternoon, that's when we see this band of more persistent rain pushing across Northern Ireland, Western Scotland too. The winds picking up here, so gusts about 40 to 50 miles per hour for the Western Isles, for instance. Lighter winds, more sunshine further south, and it should feel pretty pleasant. 19, 20 degrees or so, typically in the mid to high teens though further north. Now through this evening, then a dry end to the day for much of England and Wales, but we've got this band of rain clearing out of Scotland and Northern Ireland. That's going to bring some patchy rain tonight across parts of Northern England and North Wales. Either side of that, clearer skies, but it is again parts of southern England that see the lowest temperatures, getting down into single figures, but not as cold as the past few mornings, I think. So things are already turning a little bit milder by this stage. Into Sunday, then a slow-moving band of cloud and patchy rain sits across parts of Northern England and North Wales. Some showers rattling across parts of Scotland, but they move through fairly quickly on the breeze, so it'll be a better day for Scotland and for Northern Ireland compared to today. Best of the warm and dry weather once again for southern England. That was East Anglia, 20 or 21 degrees possible here, but most of us sitting in the high teens, I think, on Sunday. And then as we head through into Monday, weather fronts clear away and this big area of high pressure dominates our weather. So that's how it's looking really for much of the week ahead. High pressure bringing a settled, dry theme to things. Could be some early morning mist and fog patches on Monday, but they'll clear away quickly and the sunshine will break through. Lighter winds as well, so an improved picture, certainly where you've got that rain in the north through the course of today. By Monday, temperatures in the south, 21, 22 degrees possible, but we're looking at the mid to high teens across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. And then as we move through into the middle part of the week, weather fronts get kept at bay by that high pressure, but you can see the orange colours returning across the British Isles. That's that milder air mass. So the winds will start to come in from the east or even the southeast, and that is going to nudge those temperatures up. So with high pressure holding on through the course of next week, this is a pretty decent outlook for our capital cities. Then lots of dry, sunny weather. Temperatures in the south could reach the mid-20s for a time, typically looking at the high teens, though, further north. Back to you, Ben.
So that's where summer went, Sarah. Thank you.
We
Good
found
to know
it.
it's back. Thanks, Sarah. Now, one of England's largest school academy chains is set to become the first of its size to ban mobile phones for its pupils. The Ormiston Academy's Trust says it started phasing out access to smartphones for its 35,000 students during the school day because of what it calls the catastrophic impact on children's mental health and learning. Well, this comes as new research from the regulator Ofcom found that nearly a quarter of children aged between 5 and 7 in the UK have their own smartphones. They've got access to all sorts of things like games, apps and social media. They are using social media even more, with nearly 2 in 5 from that age group saying that they have accounts. That's up nearly 10% on the year before. The most popular app is WhatsApp, followed by TikTok and then Instagram. Now, that's despite the minimum age to use all three of them being 13. Well, some parents in Shropshire are concerned that smartphones could be bad for their children's development, and so they've decided to test out phones that have no access to the internet. Our reporter Joanne Rittall has been to meet them.
In the 80s, yuppies posed with huge mobile phones, but no one was glued to screens. In fact, their phones didn't even have screens. They were purely for making calls. Imagine that. Fast forward to today, and 10-year-old twins Imogen and Toby and their pals are going retro. They have feature phones, which are basically a smaller version of the old brick phone with no access to the internet.
We can call and text loads and it's really good. There are games and you can call in, you can text, but there isn't any internet. At first, I generally didn't want one because I thought everyone's going to make fun of me. Everyone's going to think I'm just weird for having one. At first, I was a bit really angry at Mum, but now I'm really like it as now basically all my friends have one. When I found out that my friends got one, that made me happy because I knew I could. I said to my mum, "Oh, can I have one?" And she was like, "Sure." So yeah.
So instead of scrolling through social media, they spend more time playing at home in Shrewsbury. Their parents are part of a growing movement called Smartphone-Free Childhood.
This movement is not about judging parents who've made decisions in the past when they didn't have enough information available to them.
Harry has a feature phone and it's worth about £50 rather than an iPhone which is £600 or £700.
The group wants parents to sign a pact not to buy their children smartphones until they're 14. There are more than 120,000 members across the country.
You don't want them to be bullied for not having a smartphone, but at the same time, you don't want to expose them to all of the risks that come with smartphones. It's the exposure to harmful content. It's the addictive element of smartphones.
The children here are happy with their internet-free phones, but Tess admits their reaction wasn't great initially.
Because nobody else had a feature phone at that time, and it was, "Mum, it's not fair."
Her hope is that simpler phones will become a social norm for children under 14. Joanne Riddle, BBC News.
We can speak now to Tom Bennett, who's a behaviour advisor for the Department for Education, and Dr Mary-Ann Munt, who's a child psychologist and parenting expert. Good morning to you both. Let's begin with you, Mary-Ann, Dr Hunt. When you see children who have spent too much time on their phones, let's just put it really